Okay.
Okay.
Hi, Kathryn.
Hey.
Welcome to YouTube.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to have you. I want to talk to you. So tell us where you are.
I am home. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
which is an amazing mythical place called home.
Travel, travel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for those of you who are joining us, Kathryn is a traveling yogi, a nomadic yoga teacher who brings her teaching across the US and across the internet and across the world to her students. So, I'm really excited about your new book, which is coming out at the end of March.
It is
But
March 29th.
it's already on Amazon. I'm looking at the real live Amazon listing.
That's so exciting.
Congratulations. Really, that is huge.
Thank you. It's my second book, and I'm very proud of my first book, but this one is so personal and exactly what I want to be writing about. So it's nerve-wracking and also exhilarating, this prospect of sharing it with the world.
Okay, it's called, I'm going to read the whole title because I love the subtitle. It's called Aim True, Love Your Body, Eat Without Fear, Nourish Your Spirit, Discover True Balance.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to pick that apart. What is Aim True? Where does that come from? I know that's your phrase. What's the genesis story of Aim True?
Sure. It's originally derivative from Greek mythology. I really adore the Greek goddess, or Roman, Artemis, or Diana is her Roman name, and she's the goddess of the moon and the goddess of the hunt. And I adored her as a little girl, and it grew into adulthood as I realized what an amazing role model she was for women, because she chose her own path, and she chose a path that isn't exactly lined up with the societal norms. And as a little girl, I just thought she was cool because she had a bow and arrow and she wore a short tunic and she ran around in the woods with animals. And as an adult woman, I thought, wow, you know exactly who you are and how you want to be in this world, and that's such a rare energy that you get from people. So as an adult, I found a prayer that was written to her, and the first line was, "Artemis, huntress of the moon, make my aim true," and it really stuck with me when I read that. And that was the catalyst of my journey for figuring out, how do I aim true in my life. And then once I figured that out for myself, I thought, well, this is really working for me, and I'm a teacher, so it would only be appropriate that I try to share this with my students. And so I did, and it was received incredibly well. And it's a very personal message, but it's also universal in the same breath, which is why I love it so much. So the book is basically me dissecting what it means for me to aim true, but also how it can be applicable to the reader, and how to make these little changes in your life. Not saying that anything's wrong with your life. I don't like that approach at all, but just how can you amplify the beauty that's already existing in your world, and find your power within that.
Mm-hmm. So I love that. What's the balance, if you could kind of put it in percentages, of the book? Is it self-help? Is it a recipe book? Is it a memoir?
That's where it gets so complicated, because it's so much in this little nugget. There's elements of self-help, because it is breaking down the aim true philosophy and how to apply it to your life.
Mm-hmm.
But it's basically how the aim true philosophy applies to all different aspects of your life. So it's emotionally, it's how you interact in your relationships. How do you find your tribe members? So that's the part about finding true balance in your life. How do you navigate life's obstacles? It's also about how do we view our food, which I think is a really important topic in this day and age. And it's part cookbook. But it's, my recipes are a way that it's a non-judgmental approach to eating well, but enjoying your food and not limiting yourself, or feel any association of guilt around it. I really want to bring people back to the kitchen and the dinner table and remind them that it's one of the most loving locations that you can put yourself into. And then the nourishing the mind, giving people access to meditation. And, I don't think I've ever met someone who hasn't said, hey, I really want to learn how to meditate, but I don't know how, or it's been really hard, or I don't have time. So I just broke it down very simply into 6 different meditations, all completely different styles, because from my experience, there's a style for everyone. Mm-hmm. And most people don't understand there's more than one way to meditate. Once they actually realize, oh, wait, you mean it's not just sitting down and stop thinking? I'm like, yeah, it's actually more than that. In hopes that, they'll find one, most likely not all of them at all, but at least one of them that's really going to resonate with them. And then help bring, a sense of well-being to nourishing our mind. And of course, there's yoga in it, which is part of the journey to loving the physical vessel that we're in, which I like to call a meat suit. So nurturing this meat suit that we're in, making sure that the spirit is strong within it, but also appreciating the vessel that we've been given, and doing the best that we can to maintain it and keep it healthy. So yeah, it covers a ton of different topics. And even working with my publisher, when we were trying to break down, what is this going to go under? We were like, I don't know, it could go under, 10 different genres. So depending on what bookstore you're in, it's probably going to lie under a different genre. So you'll just have to go ask and see. Hopefully it's presented right as soon as you walk in.
Yes.
I'm going for.
So I love the meat suit. I sometimes call it this location, just to kind of de-emphasize it's not about me or the ego or this person. It's like what's happening in this location.
I like that. That's amazing. Yeah. And we get so hung up on it. And a big thing that I try to work on in my teaching is just helping people to feel comfortable in their skin, because every person that I've ever encountered, including myself, has some kind of struggle when it comes to self-image.
Yeah.
And it's such a beast. It's such an issue right now. And, I don't want people to label themselves or label each other either. And that goes beyond body image issues, but just finding a way to stop comparing ourselves and saying this is better than that. And just, find this beautiful acceptance where, wow, I've been giving all these amazing tools. Why am I overlooking what's already right in front of me? Instead of thinking something else is going to fix me, or when I'm this much lighter, I'll feel happier, or when I can change myself. There's a lot of having to change yourself when I don't like that.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of profound stickiness of spiritual practice, or learning to love ourselves is like, I believe like you, we're all already a Buddha. We just don't know it yet. We haven't found it, but it's already all there. We're already whole. And,
yes. Yeah.
But it's like this profound disconnect, because when we come to yoga, we all have, or meditation, we have a longing, if we're honest, there's something so it's like, we want something, or we think we need to change ourselves. And it's that longing that brings us back to the mat. But actually what we want to do is drop the longing and find that we're already, is that what you're saying?
Well, I like to think of it as a constant quest for evolution, So it's not changing in the sense that something needs to be changed because it's wrong or bad or lacking, but rather can we constantly evolve into the next amazing layer of our cake?
Yeah.
It's so it's not a lack. It's like we have all these amazing layers that we haven't tapped into yet.
Yeah.
And so, that, I guess, you can say that's change. I like the word transformative more when it comes to that. And I think it's important to have a thirst and a hunger to transform, because if you're not evolving and transforming, that's stalemate, and no one wants to live in a plateaued world. But I think it's also dangerous to think that it's good to always strive to be better, but also to find the happiness in the current moment that you're in as well. Because if you're constantly striving to evolve and you don't feel like you're there yet, then when are you going to experience happiness?
So we met, you and
blowing my own mind right now.
I think that's the joy of teaching, is that you suddenly say things that you think are wonderful. It's like, I didn't know I thought that, but thank God someone asked me that question, because I had a chance to articulate it. So you and I first met over a decade ago, which is, I know, in Los Angeles, in Matia's Ashtanga room at the original Yoga Works.
The original.
The first yoga, the old school Yoga Works. And I know that incubator, not necessarily that yoga room, but living in LA, as I did for over 4 years, I absorbed a lot of negativity about my body, or I kind of picked up on the airwaves a lot of body consciousness. And that's part of this book of Aim True and your philosophy, the eat without fear and the love your body. Has that also been part of your personal process?
Oh my gosh, the experience in LA, without a doubt. I mean, I think that's ultimately why I left, is I've reached a point, especially being in the health world, being a yoga teacher on the West Side is hard enough. And, there's this in the career path that I've chosen, I'm constantly being photographed. My peers are constantly being photographed, and we live in spandex, which is not incredibly forgiving. And it's very difficult to have a I feel bloated day because you have to be in front of people every single moment, even when you're not feeling well. So there's not room to just be have one of those days where you stay home in your sweats and feel like everything's okay. And um, it's hard because I just don't want to be one of those people who's constantly ripping Los Angeles apart. But I guess that's kind of how I feel about it. And there are beautiful parts to Los Angeles, like the weather and the farmers markets, and their unbelievable sensibility when it comes to being aware with healthy living and conscious decisions. I really admire that part. But it really tears at your soul when it comes to how you feel about yourself. And I've seen all my friends go through it. And it's as someone who takes her position quite seriously as being a role model to people, it's became incredibly draining to me to see these people who are role models, who are in the limelight, who are constantly putting themselves out there, saying that they are the epitome of health when I see what they're doing to themselves behind the scenes. And I just reached a point where I was like, this isn't okay. You can't starve yourself on juices all week long, or, take a month off from eating anything remotely normal or healthy to look a certain way so you can film a DVD. It's mind blowing. But then those are the people who are praised in the press as having these remarkable bodies. And no wonder we get so screwed up, because these remarkable bodies are not attainable. They're not normal. And I would love to see both men and women, if they could actually live a healthy lifestyle, eat a balanced diet, take good physical care of their vessels, and then show the world this is actually what a healthy body looks like. We could totally rock people's perspectives of what the norm is, instead of these airbrushed, starved versions of people. And it's not helping anyone. It's certainly not helping. Like I go 2 hours without food and I'm a cranky monster. So I can't even imagine what that kind of world must feel like. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but I think if we can change people's mindsets to start, that would be a step in a really healthy, good direction.
I love that. I deeply connect with that. I started teaching over a decade ago, and I was in my early 20s, and my mom has been a yoga teacher my whole life. And I thought, okay, yeah, I'm going to keep teaching yoga. And the reoccurring thought that I had, which freaked me out, and I pulled back, I stopped teaching for years, and I've come back to it recently, was I thought, I'm terrified of having a career that's so connected with my body, because I'm terrified that I'll ruin myself with being worried about being thin enough and always being on a diet and so I literally stopped teaching yoga because of that. I was like, I can't commit to this. And then, years and years later, after going to design school and falling in love with a wonderful man and the healing of that relationship and just growing up, I've come back to teaching, but I have kind of healed some of that body relationship, and it doesn't scare me in the same way.
That's an amazing journey, and I completely understand. And that's a beautiful way of, or I don't know if beautiful is the right word, but a very succinct way of phrasing it. And I understand. I've had the same issues as a teacher where, I went through a phase where I was heavier than I normally am. And I had this constant demon in the back of my head every time I would walk into a group to teach, that they were going to judge me, or they were going to look at me and be like, wow, that's what she looks like in real life. Like just totally making things up, but enough to make myself sick, enough to make myself feel really inadequate. And gosh, I've totally dreamt about not teaching anymore and escaping that kind of scary hamster wheel that can happen when it comes to those comments and thought processes. So welcome back.
I'm so happy being back with all the yoga. Yoga people are my tribe. Yoga people are my people. So I wanted to ask you, I saw you say something really beautiful on this Yoga Is online conference from Suzanne Bryant. And you were talking about kind of the expectation that comes from the Ashtanga, Patabi Joyce world of doing a really intense, maybe over an hour, 90-minute, 2-hour vinyasa practice 6 days a week, unless thank God it's a full moon.
Moon day, yeah.
So, like, but you said what I love, the phrase that has stuck with me is you said, I realized that was too aggressive for
Yeah.
my body. And
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about that. Like, what do you see in the yoga world, your students and your teaching? I mean, that word aggressive, can you say a little bit about that?
Of course. I think it was especially prevalent in Los Angeles, where the yoga scene is so saturated and everyone does yoga and often multiple times a day. And, it's funny how yoga attracts often very addictive personalities. And for many people, it's a healing place to go to escape an addiction. But if we're not careful, yoga can just turn into another form of prison. It's a slightly healthier addiction than something else. And like anything, there is too much, such thing as too much of a good thing. And that's why yoga is so interesting, because you have the yin and you have the yang practice. And as the practitioner, we have to be intelligent enough or insightful enough to listen to our body and understand what it needs. And, if we're just looking at culturally, like, oh, we should be burning X amount of calories a day. And, you should be spending 90 minutes doing something athletic, when that's bull. That's bull, I mean, I've sat down with doctors and they're like, hey, you don't feel good about your body and you want to lose weight? You need to not work out, because your adrenals are so blown out that if you do anything aggressive, you're only going to amplify a situation that's already bad. And I'd never even thought about that, where I was like, you're right. I need to sleep. I need to lay down. That's the healthiest thing I can do for my body. And so when I look at practitioners, I see that happening all the time, where they're so fixated on, achieving a posture or getting stronger or becoming more advanced, or, checking it off of their to-do list. It's no longer something that feeds their soul. Like, I have to go to yoga today. And I think that's a dangerous place to live, because it's not something to check off your list. And you know what? If you don't make it to a practice, don't feel bad about it. I see people punishing themselves for not showing up. And my background is in Ashtanga, where if you would miss a practice, you would most likely be punished for it. And, it's also a very strict system with high expectations. And, as a young woman, it kept me accountable, and I appreciated that. But as I became busier in my life, it became way too aggressive, because my life was fiery. My practice was fiery. There was no balance. And I needed to find a way to balance out my physical practice. So I'm not saying Ashtanga is bad. I still think it's a phenomenal practice. But let's say that your normal life is very quiet, very soft, very laid back. That could be a beautiful practice for you. And that's where you light your tapas, and that's where you get your fire going. But if you have a already stimulated, high-paced lifestyle, and you're doing Ashtanga on top of that, I would dare say you're not doing yourself a favor at that point, at least not if it's on a regular basis. But who am I to say anything for anyone else but myself? But that's what I learned personally through the experience. And so, as a teacher, it's a delicate balance, because you can't, I'm a teacher, I'm not a therapist. I can only offer my experience for people. Yeah. And if they want to listen to it, great. And if they don't, that's awesome. But, I think I'm a slightly astute observer. And that's what I see happening the most often, is people, they're not listening to their bodies, and they're not listening to what they truly need, because they think that they have to do something. Yeah. And I hope people can get to a point where they realize you don't have to do anything.
I completely agree. A friend of mine who's a yoga teacher, she said, I used to do Ashtanga in my 20s because I didn't have anything else in my life. I would just go home and sit in the bathtub.
I spent 4 hours at a yoga studio every day, and that was okay.
And then come home exhausted and sit in a bathtub and then make yourself food. But she says now, she just turned 40. She has twin little girls. She's like, I can't do Ashtanga now because I'm too tired.
It's exhausting. The idea of doing that again, for part of me, it's nostalgic, because maybe it represents a different time in my life when I had time to do that. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way I could make that happen.
It was a huge learning for me when I started to separate out yoga from exercise. I realized when I was doing Ashtanga, they were synonymous.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when I started looking for other ways to exercise in my life, hiking and skiing and swimming, I do, I live in the Alps and I do a ton of outdoor stuff. And so yoga's become something different for me. I wanted to ask you about that. Actually, I see on Instagram you're doing lots of martial arts, or what are you doing for exercise that's not yoga?
That's a great question because yoga isn't exercise for me anymore either. It's yoga when I'm doing my yoga practice, it's because I crave it. It's because I need a semblance of recharging myself, bringing myself into a balanced state. And then I do martial arts for the physical benefit for sure, but it's stimulating to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm new at it. So not to say I mastered yoga or anything like that, but I have been doing yoga long enough that I feel very comfortable and I have achieved many postures. Like, what does that even mean? But the martial arts is, I like being a beginner again.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because
it's
sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
teaching is about learning, right? So you're going back to discovering the joy of learning.
yeah, and there's still so much for me to learn in yoga. But as far as asana goes, I feel like I've reached a point where I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of been there and done that. And there's still there are poses I can't do, but I've also reached a point where I don't care. I don't care if I can't do it. I'm totally fine with not doing that. Um, and as a younger woman, that lit a fire under my butt and made me want to work harder if I couldn't physically do something. So it's evolved. But it's to what we were talking about earlier. That's the beauties. Don't we want to constantly evolve, even if we don't know what we're evolving into? It's just there for us. So it's taking care of me, the yoga practice and my physical. Like I like to sweat and do martial arts, and that's where I get to burn.
Sweat therapy.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the last kind of topic of this conversation I wanted to touch on, because that's the thread, I'm talking with teachers about their own home practice. So what can you tell us about sort of your practice today or this week, and how your practice, does it change throughout the year, or how do you think about, what's your philosophy around how you think about your home practice?
If I'm actually home for more than a couple of days, then I can get back into a routine that I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my home practice is not, well, I guess maybe it is actually kind of predictable. I still take the primary series of Ashtanga and kind of put my own spin on it because I like that sequence because I don't have to think about it. I don't have to be creative, but I also use it as the skeleton for my practice and then adjust postures or add or remove things according to how I'm feeling that day. Um, and then often it'll get super tangential and I'll be,
Yeah.
so far from primary series, but it started out that way. For me, doing my sun salutations, those are so my favorite things in the world. They just feel so amazing to me. I love that it moves my body in every direction and it kind of wrings me out. And then hip openers, I definitely like to spend a pretty decent amount of time in my hips, a little bit of upside down time because that flushes me out. And then I practice japa meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to do, and this is the thing, like, I'm going to be totally honest with y'all. Sometimes I meditate every single day and then I'll go months and I won't even touch it. I'm not going to pretend to be one of those holier than thou. I'm so good at doing something every day, people, because I'm not. I'm really not. Maybe if I lived here full time, I would be better at stuff like that. But, I'm also trying to be kind to myself because I do travel often in very heavy waves and so my routine's gone when I'm traveling and I'm not okay with waking up at 4 a.m. because that's going to be the only time to squeeze in a yoga practice. I'd rather sleep. Is that a horrible thing to say? I really like sleep. But I've also told myself, like, you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're not having your routine doesn't mean you're going to fall apart. And I believe a big part of my practice is talking to myself and reminding myself, like, this is all right. You can constantly adjust. You're always going to be okay. And that's what pulls me through the being far away from home and not having my mat and not having my routine.
So when you're home, do you have any kind of system about, like, you do it in the mornings or the afternoons? How do you?
Really, meditation I prefer in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
If I prefer to wake up, go straight to my yoga room before I even go downstairs and meditate. That's the best. But as far as the asana practice goes, it just kind of depends on what I have going that day. I've never been, when I did Ashtanga, it was always the 4 o'clock afternoon practice. And that's nice because your physical body is really ready to go. Earlier morning, physical body, not so much, but your mind's a little sharper. So, Yeah, listen to me, my routineless routine.
Well, I mean, it's so vata deranging, the life of getting on airplanes and traveling and being in a new bed with a new food and a new. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a strange life. So, but what about when you travel? I mean, do you take a yoga mat with you? Do you try to say? Do you give yourself like, okay, I'm just going to do 15 minutes, or do you just kind of say like, it's not even on my list for today because I have other things to focus on?
If I know that there's a window of time where I get to be in my hotel room for a while, definitely sun salutations, definitely some double or single pigeon. That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
my go-to moves, or legs up the wall if
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling just absolutely exhausted. Because then I just know I'm getting a little bit of strength. I'm working on my mobility. I'm opening things up. Back bends are a big love of mine these
Yeah.
days. So I would probably do more of a creative chest opening oriented kind of Surya Namaskara. Um, and that helps. But I can do 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes and feel satisfied. I let go of that attachment to an hour and 90-minute practice a long time ago. Practicing for 90 minutes in this day and age, I'm like, whoa.
I have such a funny story to tell you that I was with my family in South Texas 2 weeks ago for Thanksgiving, and we went to my aunt's ranch, and now we're 60 people. It's this huge family gathering. So some people have to stay in town, and we were at the Best Western in this little town in South Texas, and my mother and I had next door rooms. And one morning she had texted me like, "Oh, come over," and so she just left her door open, but ajar, and she was doing she had taken the couch apart and she had piled up the cushions and she was hanging off the bed in kind of like an approximation of a supported shoulder stand. And then someone knocked on the door and she said, "Come in!" And she was upside down facing away, and it was the maid at the Best Western in this South Texas town who was horrified. Like, what are you doing? And then she startled my mom. My mom came down. She's like, "Oh, I was doing yoga." And the woman was like, "What's yoga?"
Oh no.
And I thought you were my daughter. It was just hilarious. And then I came in right at the tail end of this, and I saw this scene unfolding, and I just thought, "Mom, I love you. Like, you don't care that you don't have a yoga bolster with you. Like, you're still going to be doing shoulder stands."
She is a warrior. That is fantastic, and I'm gonna have to try that sometime.
Oh, it was adorable. Well, Kathryn, it's been really lovely talking with
Oh,
you.
likewise. It's so good to hear your voice and see you, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you. I'm sure we will cross paths someplace and sometime soon in real life.
I
I,
hope so, and
I'm
maybe not in LA.
no. Are you going to Estes Park, the Yoga Journal conference in?
I think I am. I'm almost
Okay.
positive I am.
I'm definitely going to be there in
Okay.
September, so hopefully we'll hug there.
That would be great. And
And
enjoy
then
the hops. I'm so jealous. That's amazing.
I
Your life
know.
sounds fantastic.
I know, I'm a happy camper. Yeah, and really congratulations on your book again. Aim True. Everyone can pre-order it on Amazon, and good luck with your book launch tour. I imagine it'll be a little bit of travel.
Lots of travel. It'll be on, but
All right, namaste. Happy holidays.
pleasure. Thanks, honey.
Bye.
Bye.